Yeah, Shembe is my witness, Jehovah is Zulu. I'm about to jump off the page now, niggas. About to jump off the page in our third video, second last video. This is what I gotta point out. Mind your language, just in case we get all crass up in this motherfucker. Up in this motherfucker. Shit. So, I just described the literature. In the context of the story, Jehovah is the main character, and he's a spirit that's trying to become a son of man who will be known as Jesus, that will sit on the throne as King of the Jews. His throne, by the way, his seat is King of the Jews. So the title King of the Jews represents the seat of Jesus, who becomes the spirit that intends to become, who becomes the Son of Man that sits on that seat. Right? So, Jehovah becomes the Son of Man that sits as King of the Jews, and he will be known as Jesus. That's the moral of the story of the Bible. But when you pay attention to this, guys, it's a very tragic story because it doesn't really play out that way. Still, till today, we haven't seen Jesus show up to sit as King of the Jews. Quite tragic. So now what I want to point out is that there's a scripture that talks about Jesus saying, "Truly, truly, I tell you that this generation will not pass away until they see the Son of Man coming to take his place as King of the Jews, come to take his place with his holy angels." Alright, so it becomes very difficult to understand that Jesus would say something like that and show himself to be untruthful and be wrong, because at this point in time, how many generations have passed away since the writing of these scriptures? Many. So this is what I want to point out, is to say that, guys, the Bible is literature. And the whole point of this literature is to reveal some ideas and principles that are true. Despite the fact that it's fictional and not true, the principles in the literature are true. So the principle is, what was the purpose of this writing? And this is what I want to go into, and I want to just jump into it and just look at this. Say, guys, let me take you through this, right? Let me take you through this, right? Okay, so this is, let me do the author's story. The author's story. So what happened is the author, so anybody that reads the Bible understand that this is inspired writing. So no human being can really claim, and this is what I'm taking from any Bible, particularly Bible believers and the Christians, that anybody that reads, even if you're not a Christian, even if you're not a believer, you have to, at some point, if you do pay attention to the literature, you have to, at some point, think, geez, there was definitely a mind behind this, and a heart behind this, and somebody was trying to achieve something. So the black conspiracy theorists and the black conscious people tend to have the attitude that this is a book written by white people to try and colonize us. I have to jump in and make some supplications for you guys on the black consciousness tip, especially the African spiritual guys, to say, look guys, don't get it confused. The doctrines, the stories that the colonizers, the white man came with, is what was used to subjugate us. But the text itself, so what I'm trying to say is that the white man came with the Bible, but the white man is not the author of the Bible. The white man used the Bible to oppress us, used the Bible and fabricated doctrines, understandings that still imprison us today. Like, I'll give you an example. Typical example is that the doctrine of saying that Lucifer is the devil, the doctrine of saying that Satan is against God, is God's enemy. The doctrine that says that you die and you go to heaven. All these doctrines are fabricated by the white man using the Bible. However, what I'm going to point out now is to say, guys, please don't trip, guys. Don't trip, niggas. Don't trip. Right. What I'm going to point out is to say, when you read the text, no Caucasian, I'm telling you this now, guys. No Caucasian, no white man. White people, and I'm going to sound racist when I say this, but white people have a certain way that they think. The same way we have Chinese people think in a certain way and have a certain attitude towards life. I'll give you a classic point. Chinese people have 5,000 characters in their alphabet system. And a kid has to know about 1,000 by the time he's 6. 1,000, recognize 1,000 different characters. IQ, the ability to store and remember information is insane. You see, an African Bantu speaking person, a Bantu language speaker wouldn't think that way. A Bantu speaking person speaks in principle, uses illustration, is creative in his thinking, in his speech. He's not gonna go and be sitting around memorizing 1,000 or not alone 50, not alone 100 characters, letters. For goodness sake, we never wrote down stories. We had no need to write things down. There was no need to write things down. We just do shit, and we preserve the stories through oral tradition. So there's no need to write these down. So you see, there's a different temperament. And what I'm trying to point out is that the ability to tell stories is an African thing. It's not necessarily a Caucasian thing. And this is what I'm trying to say, is that the spirit that inspired, there's a spirit that inspired the writings of the Bible. And you can tell the attitude of the spirit by looking at the different books. So now what I'm trying to point out is the fact that if there's anything that's real, if we ignore the fact and say, okay, this Bible is not real, it's not factual, it's fictional. But if there's anything that's real, is that there was definitely a spirit that inspired the writings, that inspired people and drove people to preserve these writings, translate them into the different languages, preserve them, and over the centuries. So what I'm trying to point out is that the history of the author is, let me just put it out this way. Right. The history of the author is Hebrew writings. Right. So before this Hebrew writings, this is Old Testament. Greek writings. New Testament. And why I'm saying this is astounding, many right. So there are many copyists over hundreds of years. Same here with the Greek writings. And these were preserved, right? These were preserved and then translated by Rome into Latin, and then preserved right. Later, first into German by Martin Luther, and then modern translations. Over hundreds of years. It's immortalized, so it has been immortalized now into So what I'm trying to point out here, guys, this is over. This period is over, let's just say 3,000 year project. This is real. The spirit that inspired writings. Anybody that's a writer, anybody that's a creative knows that for you to create something cool or dope, or even if it's a rap, anything, you gotta be inspired. There's that thing that inspires you to write. So what I'm trying to say, it's one thing, and why I'm saying this is real, the author, why I'm saying there is an author, is that how does somebody tell a consistent story across 3,000 years, right? And preserve this across 3,000 years, like it's a particular individual. Why do I say this? Is that it's very difficult in one generation. Is that if I were to ask you to do something for me, most likely you would do it in your own way, and most likely, why you have nothing, you have no reason to be loyal to me. You can just whatever you want. Why would I continually, as a human being, I would rather put my name and write my own stories and tell my own stories? Why are all these people inspired to copy down, preserve these copies, and translate these copies, and even write these stories in the first place and preserve them and copy them? Why were none of them able to say, hey, you know what, let me take this story, read the story, and write my own version of the story and publish that? This is the point I'm trying to make, is that there's a spirit that has been intentional in making sure that human beings that lived and died generation after generation worked on this project to a point where it is now, where it's immortalized. I can actually go Google, click any verse or any idea that comes from the Bible, and it will give me the verse. So this is what I'm trying to say, guys. This is what I'm trying to say. So the literature might be fictional, but what is real is the spirit and the effort that went into creating this literature. That is real. So the characters in the story might not be real, but definitely, if you're a man of faith or you can do any math, the spirit that inspired the writings and the preservation and the translation of this particular book is definitely real. I want to put it in the context of African spirituality. Nothing happens without the intent of the spirit. Right? Anything that happens in life, it's because the spirit is the one that is determined that it will happen. So what I'm trying to point out is that, guys, the Bible as a piece of work would not have existed without a consistent and persistent spirit working on it over the past 2,000 years. And this is what I want to say now, is that the purpose of the Spirit writing the story was to reveal to the reader what the true intentions of the Creator of life is. So, the reason why he wrote the story is to justify, so that when he does show up, when the Spirit that inspired the writings does take his place in creation as a Son of Man, he can be able to say, look, I did say, guys, I did say that I was going to show up. And I did say I would take my place as a Son of Man and become the King of all creation. I did say it. I did disclose my intentions. So the purpose of the Bible is to disclose the intentions of the true Creator. Who is this true Creator? Who is the one disclosing his intentions? The original author, the Spirit that inspired the writings. So this is where I'm going to make the statement that true God is the author of the Bible, the Spirit that inspired the writings. That is the true God, not necessarily the character in the story. However, the character in the story reveals who the true God is trying to become. So the author is trying to become Jehovah, trying to be who Jehovah intended to be. Trying to become that. He's revealing his intentions. Right. So what does he do? He writes a piece of literature so that people can understand and get familiar with the idea. And then so that when the time is right, he can be able to show up and reveal himself. So this is what you'd say in African spirituality or black magic principle. The first step of doing anything or creating any new reality, you must make your intentions known. You must consecrate. So the Bible is a consecration of the original author's intentions. Now I'm going to jump into the man that was able to consummate this and put this idea in its rightful place. And this is where we're going to go into and say, Shembe is my witness. Jehovah is so.